Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you fine folk here on YouTube world. I'm just going to quickly check my audio and my camera are in the right place, and indeed they are. So we can go right ahead. I will, as per usual, be posting this link immediately onto my Twitter, so anybody who doesn't know knows that they can immediately come across and find me here, so that if they have any questions they want to have answered, they know to come straight to me, straight to the source. Because one thing I'm hearing a lot of recently is things I haven't said. So let's nip that in the bud as quickly as possible. There's a couple of immediate sort of big name things which I'm going to be discussing today. The most obvious ones are things that are definitely going to be high in the public interest immediately, that being information on Matt Hardy, a lot more information on WWE and third parties, which of course has been in the media recently, but I've been able to get a lot more information given the time to do that recently. And then I'm going to discuss AEW's All Out show by and large, because I don't feel we should just be talking about one particular moment of it. By and large, it was a good show, but I'll get to that a bit later on. You are, as always, plenty welcome to talk to me about any questions you have. Ask away. You know where they are in the comments. You can say hi, you can say whatever you want. So I'm going to get to the news, as it were. When it regards third parties and WWE, I'm going to do a quick recap of this story as it's come out. So the original story was broken by Wrestling Inc., essentially saying that Vince McMahon on Thursday had stated that he'd sent a letter out stating that third-party companies such as Twitch and Cameo, he wanted WWE superstars working with them to cease and desist immediately. Within 30 days, they would be expected to have stopped. That's obviously quite a big deal. A lot of people are looking to streaming services like that for secondary income at the moment. That directly affects whether or not they can make that money, and they do need to be making that money at the moment, because with lockdown, as it were, with the country, as it were, there are no house shows, and that directly impacts their income. It also means they're going to have a lot of time where they don't have anything to do. So we'll have seen a lot of, for example, Up Down Down's been doing the party videos, which is a lot of Uno and a lot of Monopoly, which I've been quite enjoying. But in addition to that, people have been making a lot of money on Cameo. One thing I'll be able to quite exclusively report here, I've been trying to keep track, I don't know if anyone's actually spotted this, but the WWE are monitoring wrestling news websites which continually publish the amount of money that WWE superstars are making from Cameo. This is particularly as regards WWE superstars who are using their wrestling names. The Wrestling Inc. report did state, or at least there have been rumors since, stating that Vince McMahon directly said that he owns the private and personal names of superstars. With some, this is the case. With John Cena, Vince McMahon literally owns the name John Cena, and every time he performs under the name John Cena, he has to give a cut to the WWE for use of that name. However, to my knowledge, this isn't the case for many people. Some people, it is the case. This is very much a case where people have to individually check their contracts. But Vince McMahon has said that to limited people whose names he genuinely does own, as it were, and have a trademark on. There aren't many at the minute, but there are definitely some, particularly legends and people on legends contracts. So a quick catch up on my notes as well. I haven't been able to confirm that Vince McMahon said that to anyone else, and those that I have been able to confirm it with state that in their contract it does clearly state that that actually is the case. However, as I've reported on Sportskeeda, WWE at the minute are very close to open warfare with at least one top star. I did mention in my report that what we are seeing, or what we are going to see in the near future, is the WWE starting accounts on streaming services. Now, apparently, there are no intentions to start a Cameo account. However, when it comes to virtual meet and greets, they will be starting to do them regularly. And that will also be one of the things that they try and control with media, because with so much news coming out of, for example, AJ Styles' Twitch stream, for aggregators and wrestling journalism sites, it means there is a lot less interest in getting interviews, and it means that there is a lot less of a demand for WWE superstars. This is a big concern for the WWE, who take pride in the fact that they can control the message. When you are on Twitch, there is no PR person next to you, and from what I have been told, they are very keen on making sure there is at least still some PR ongoing. Let's get to the question, shall we? Soul Starling says, never heard of Cameo. It's one of those things you'll only really have heard of if you've ever had some interest in it. But Alexa Bliss was asked out over Cameo. Unsuccessfully. She handled it very well. Anthony said, could Tessa be the mystery woman on SmackDown? That would be a really strange gimmick change. I don't think so, but I can't guarantee it. To my knowledge, there is no intention of announcing a signing of Tessa Blanchard, even if she has signed, because at the moment they are still trying to look like they are saving money. Ellie Lynn says, do you think Sasha will be written off TV for the rest of the year? Possibly. I think it's more likely we will see her around Hell in a Cell time, because Sasha versus Bayley at Hell in a Cell will be a big deal. I also think people are going to be very disappointed if they expect Sasha to win this feud, because this feud is not about Sasha. Sasha is not the main character in this particular feud, and she hasn't been the main character in the women's division on SmackDown for a while. This really has been all about Bayley reaching that upper echelon. Noob & Co. says, I've seen a lot of people are upset that Asuka's YouTube channel, but Asuka is smart enough to use her real name as a YouTube channel. Yes, one of the reasons we haven't seen Kana in WWE, and one of the reasons we will never see Kana in the WWE, is because the WWE does not own the trademark to it. Kana TV, absolutely fine. Anthony has said, Rebbi has every right to be mad. I will get to that briefly in my update on Matt Hardy. Panther Fan says, who do you think Seth faces at Clash of Champions if he's on the show? I think there was a plan to have Seth Rollins versus Buddy Murphy. I think, unfortunately, because of the injury to Rey Mysterio, that plan may well be out the window, and we may see Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy against the Street Profits, because to my knowledge, the Mysterios were next in line, and now, of course, they are unavailable. Okay, no questions at the moment, so I'm going to move on to the information that I have about Matt Hardy. As some people will be aware and some people will not, when it came to the AEW All Out show last night, Matt Hardy took a pretty strong bump. He was supposed to be speared off some sort of crane, as it were. I won't say crane. I don't know the name of the piece of equipment, but essentially it lifts you up. It's like a cherry picker, but it stands on the ground, as it were. And after trying to deliver a side effect through a merch table, he got turned around. Sammy Guevara hit the spear. Matt Hardy cleared the table and hit his head on the concrete. He was out and not moving for a little while. There were definite fears of concussion. The information as we have been given it by AEW is that he was checked out on the spot. He said he could continue, and the checkup showed no signs of concussion, so he was allowed to continue and rush the finish of the match. Rebbi Hardy, Matt Hardy's wife, has stated that that it is 1,000% a concussion. She, naturally being his wife, would be in the know about this information. However, just before I came on air, Tony Khan, who is in charge at AEW, stated that Matt Hardy came through the hospital with flying colors. He is out of the hospital now, and there are no signs of concussion. So definite conflicting reports on that one. Rebbi Hardy, just after announcing the concussion to the world, went to private for her tweets, which means that I can't really follow up and chase up at this point, even though I would personally like to. I will await more information from Matt Hardy. Once I have it, I will definitely share it. I'm a big fan of Matt. I really enjoy his work. This was a scary moment. I really hope he is fine. Anthony says, I'll say Andrade and Garza get the tag title match and Seth faces Keith. Possibly, but Andrade and Garza have had so many tag title matches and they've failed at every one so far. We're not getting many questions in at the moment, so this may be one of my shorter streams, which I'm fine with. It is quite late on a Sunday night. I do want to touch on the All Out show by and large. There is a very big show. It was a very long show. The buy-in matches were quite brief, but all in all of the matches got significant time. There was a lot of variety to it. Obviously, we had the backstage match. We had 2 women's matches, one of which was cinematic, and we had everything going on with Mimosa Mayhem. We had a lot happening in this show. I would say match of the night for me is Shida versus Thunder Rosa, but Jon Moxley and MJF gave them a damn good run for their money. My particular favorite moment was the finish to Moxley and MJF. We hear a lot from even Jericho on recordings recently in interviews saying that he wants to avoid ref bumps and dodgy finishes and DQs. That was one of the reasons he gave as to why women are more likely to favor AEW when you look at the demographics, because they are less forgiving of messing around like that. They did mess around a little bit with this finish. MJF was definitely protected, but it was a ref distraction rather than a bump. The ref still didn't look stupid. It's also a curious one that I have big questions about how they finished this, because they have shown recently that Jon Moxley does not need the paradigm shift to win matches, but he needed the paradigm shift here. It did make MJF look very, very good. I think MJF has a very bright future. I don't think that future is now. I think it'll be a little while yet before MJF is reaching the heights, as it were, of AEW Championship, and I don't think that's a problem. Anthony says, is it possible Tony Khan is covering his butt? With him saying that, he's going to need to back it up. You've got to remember, Tony Khan is going to be at a lot of press conferences, commercial conferences, conference calls. Essentially, he is going to have to justify his position. He is going to have to present for this argument. And if Matt Hardy is back for Dynamite, then that is a clear sign that there isn't a concussion. So I don't think he can cover his butt in this one. I think he would have to justify what he's doing. Riffeng says the match between Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy was a mess. Actually, their entire feud was a complete mess. I wouldn't say the match was a mess. I would say it was not the best match on the card in any way. But when it comes to Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy, I believe they have, this is something I refer to as negative chemistry. This is not anyone's fault. Some people just have natural no chemistry, much like some people have natural chemistry. It's no fault of either man, but whenever they seem to have stepped into the ring, someone has got hurt. We had the initial chair thrown at Matt Hardy, which cut him open. In a match 2 weeks ago on Dynamite, Sammy Guevara was bleeding heavily, and now this has happened. Maybe we just move on from this feud, call it now, and just wrap it up, because you will always encounter some people who just don't have chemistry. Now, you can sometimes work through it. I think of Rey Mysterio and CM Punk when they first wrestled in WWE. They did not have chemistry in that match. They didn't, but they learned and grew in chemistry later on. It may be because the match wasn't the initially planned one. In addition to that, we have, I think of Naomi and Alexa Bliss when they first had a wrestling match. No chemistry whatsoever. They did manage to develop later on, but people were getting hurt in those matches. There are other examples, but those are the ones I would say here. Anthony says, I thought all that was underwhelming out of all the AEW pay-per-views they've had. That is not necessarily a kick in the teeth for AEW. I think that's high praise for the standard of pay-per-view that they've laid out so far. Anthony says, hey, Tony, before you say anything, I'll say it. SummerSlam kicked all out, but we'll see. I think SummerSlam was a very good pay-per-view. I think Payback was a very good pay-per-view, and I think All Out delivered differently. There was more variation for me. In-ring quality was about the same, but when it comes to big moments, SummerSlam hadn't beat. Welcome, Jagged. I am good. Thank you. And yourself. Anthony also says, I think Kenny is the next big name that beats Moxley. Certainly possible. I think Lance Archer, who won the Battle Royal, does stand a chance. I think he would be quite a good champion. And I think they are going to have quite good chemistry because of their work together in New Japan. So I think Kenny may be setting up for that, but it would take a while yet, whereas Lance Archer is there and he is ready. Anthony also says, Omega versus Page, Young Bucks versus FTR, and Archer versus Moxley. I think his top 3 matches for Full Gear. I think Young Bucks versus FTR is definitely what comes next. Omega versus Page, I think that'll play out and take a little bit longer to do so, but that's just my opinion. Riffing says, my pro wrestling is not mainstream. It depends what you mean by mainstream. The WWE have been trying to make WWE wrestling mainstream for a long time. It's why when people think wrestling, they generally think of WWE. But for some reason, people aren't fans. Anthony says, who's next for Shida? I would say now Britt Baker's back. We could see Britt Baker stepping in the ring with Hikaru Shida. But at the moment, there is a lot of flux when it comes to the women's division. I don't know for certain if we have a working arrangement with the NWA, but I expect that Shida will be returning a favor in the NWA at some point soon. Anthony says, do you know if there's a push for Thunder Rosa to be signed? To my knowledge, Thunder Rosa cannot be signed to AEW at the moment while she is under an NWA contract. She cannot sign for both promotions at once because AEW do offer exclusive contracts. You can just do non-contracted work. Riffing says, is FTR versus Young Bucks planned for Full Gear? At the moment, I would say yes, but that is speculation on my part. I can't say for sure. The beauty of AEW is that they have time between pay-per-views, which means they can build that story. But FTR versus Young Bucks is something they've wanted to do since the second the FTR joined. Anthony says, if Matt is okay, I'd love Matt feuding with Dark Order. Could happen, but I think at the moment it will be Dustin Rhodes stepping in against Brody Lee. Nubanco says, so WWE only target Twitch, YouTube, Cameo, and TikTok accounts from names he's owned and not names they don't own. For example, Asuka's YouTube channel or Billy Kay and Peyton Royce YouTube channels. The WWE may dispute that. That is a simple fact in that regard. They may dispute that. It's a very difficult one to line up, as it were, because while I'm hearing a lot that up, down, down is safe, up, down, down may not feel safe. Because what's to say what names they own? To my knowledge, WWE talent are not planning to bow down to this one. They are planning to refuse. However, they have 30 days, and as a trade unionist myself, I am fully aware that people tend to be bolshy and refuse in the early days, and by the 30th day, they don't want to talk to you anymore because they're all bowing their heads. So we'll see as regards that. I think a lot of people will change their names on YouTube, on Twitch, and so on and so forth, and I think they'll probably get away with it. Ellie Lynn says, will Sasha likely be the next SmackDown Women's Champion? I still think the next SmackDown Women's Champion will be Mandy Rose. I think Sasha Banks will lose the feud with Bayley. Riffing says, what do Finn Balor, Seth Rollins, Daniel Bryan, and AJ Styles have in common? No idea, Riffing. What do you reckon? Anthony says, how long does Cody stay out? A while. He's been an extremely, extremely hardworking man for a long time. I think he thoroughly deserves some time away, and hopefully he'll do good things with it. I know he's still working backstage, for example, to try and make sure things are still working in that regard. Anthony JCP says, what's the next step for Retribution? Retribution are essentially being booked week by week. Their role changes week by week, and the people under the masks change week by week. So it's really hard to say. At the moment, I expect them to do almost exactly what they have been doing so far, which is turn up, interrupt a match, and then vanish completely. I'd like to see them maybe get involved in the 24/7 championship hunt and just steal the championship and never relinquish it, but I may be asking too much. Riffing says, is Tyson Fury returning to WWE to face Drew McIntyre? At the moment, there is no plan for Tyson Fury to return to the WWE. He is not contracted for a match, and the WWE are not willing to pay him to come in for a match. However, Drew McIntyre is very good at getting his own way, and he is building a lot of interest here. He reached out, started this essentially. Tyson Fury reached back. So it may happen. However, it would happen when crowds are back, and it would happen when the WWE are paying for people again. So we'll hear about Brock Lesnar re-signing before we'll hear about Tyson Fury coming back. Anthony says, do you know if there's going to be a case of WWE names go against WWE with the third party thing? I don't believe so. There is no court case planned. To my knowledge, people are essentially changing things to their real names. They have been checking their contracts, consulting lawyers, making sure they do own the rights to those names, and then they are working with that. So if no one is working against them, there will be no lawsuit. The WWE, after this 30 days, will either clamp down again if people have not acted, or if they have acted, they will simply let things fly. Ace Shock says, should Eddie Kingston feud with MJF? I think that'd be a very good feud, but I think Eddie Kingston's faction is a lot stronger than MJF's at the moment, so he might not be the perfect option. There may be better options out there. Anthony says, Paige already said she doesn't care, she's not stopping Twitch, but she has changed the name of her Twitch, which means she did consult her contract and did consider whether that was the right move. So no, she's not stopping her Twitch, but they do not own the name that she has changed it to. And she knows that for certain because of whose name it is. Riffing says, the Raw Underground Championship plans already scrapped. There were no championship plans. A Raw Underground Championship was under consideration. There was no confirmation that there was a championship planned. Ace Shock says, Asuka thought one step ahead. She definitely did. She's a very intelligent woman. Panther Fan says, the next main roster call-up, for me, probably Adam Cole. I think Adam Cole is logically the next big name call-up. We may get other names, for example, Mercedes Martinez was part of Retribution last week. She does have a big match on NXT this week. I suspect she will be one who is on the main roster sooner rather than later, but she'll be under a mask, so she won't be formally announced. Anthony says, how are people outside WWE looking at WWE now that the third-party news came out? Well, here's a tidbit of news for you. Twitch and Cameo are aware of the edict that the WWE put out, and they're not particularly happy about it. There's a bit of news for you. Ace Shock says, did you see the Mox promo after All Out? I did not. I think it was very, very late in the day. So after the match finished, I shut off. I will look back at it at some point soon. I do plan to rewatch the show before I do any review or anything like that of it. So I'll give it the time of day then. But it was about nearly 5 a.m. when I finally finished that. I'm always happy to work for a company like Sportskeeda where other people will be on the conference calls. Riffing says, is the stable of Apollo Crews, Cedric Alexander, Mustafa Ali, and Ricochet already over? Nope, it is not over. They simply aren't appearing as much as they used to. Ace says, Vince will drop Metribution. I don't think he will. I think this is going long term. Anthony says, if Ember doesn't wrestle again, she'd be a great GM. I'm not sure she would choose to take on a role of GM. I think if she doesn't wrestle again, she will move into either full-time gaming or full-time media. She's a very good presenter, and she's been doing punditry work in the meantime. Panther Fan says, you hear the phrase jump from WWE to AEW a lot, but who do you speculate could be the first to jump to WWE from AEW? Good question. There will be people moving the other way. That is going to happen. I am not sure. There's obviously a lot of people on AEW right now. There are definitely plans in motion for a second 2-hour TV show. So that's why I would expect we have such depth of roster. But I think when it comes to people who are going to be attracted by WWE money, it's hard to say. When it comes to people WWE are interested in, Lance Archer is definitely someone that WWE have high interest in. They really would like to bring him over from AEW to WWE. There are other people, but I think Lance Archer is one of the favorites at the moment. Riffing says, are Twitter and Facebook banned from WWE too? Absolutely not. Ace Shock says, did you give your thoughts on what JR said? If so, I apologize. I'm late to the chat. I did not give my thoughts on that. I think it was a very dumb, careless thing to say. I think he should never have said it, and to my knowledge, he has already apologized for saying it. Riffing says, should WWE cancel NXT, NXT UK, and 205 and send every wrestler to the main roster, especially Raw, to please the fans? Nope, that would really not please any of the fans. Noob & Co says, do you think Rhea Ripley will be the one to be written off after the steel cage match this coming Tuesday at NXT? I do not. I think Mercedes Martinez will be written off because she has been under Retribution masks, and she is part of Retribution. Anthony says, Retribution on Raw tells me it's Ali. I'm not confident of that. Riffing says, is Bo Dallas a new friend of Bray Wyatt? It is not. There is speculation that the concept of the walrus that has been trademarked by WWE suggests that it will be a new friend to follow up with a feud with Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns. However, it would be early in the day for that to happen. I suspect that we won't actually see Wobbly Walrus, at least for another month or so. I think the new friend that he's talking about is Alexa Bliss bringing in Nikki Cross. I think that's the plan at the moment, but we will have to see. Anthony says, I predict Matt Hardy ends up back in WWE. I do not. To my knowledge, Matt Hardy has no interest in returning to the WWE because he has given them lots of opportunities. And to put it simply, they have not done great things by him. Similarly to Ace Shock saying Matt Hardy may leave AEW after what happened. I think Matt Hardy's had an unfortunate run so far on AEW. It's not lived up to what it could have done. A large part of that comes down to the fact that he's been brought in and has worked entirely during the pandemic era. I think there is more he could do. There's more he could do. And I think over time, he will attempt to do more. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, see what happens there. Anthony says, is it true Eddie Kingston was contacted by WWE right after his AEW debut? To my knowledge, no, that is not true. Riffing says, should Jimmy Havoc and B Priestley sign with NXT UK? I don't understand why they would do that when they're currently, they're currently unavailable, yes. I don't think there is much interest in them in NXT UK. B Priestley definitely will get offers. Jimmy Havoc will not, because at the moment NXT UK is trying to avoid bringing in anyone who is in any way related or associated to any allegations that have been made under the Speaking Out movement. Anthony JCP says, if news is to be believed, Eddie Kingston and Thunder Rosa were contacted only to be refs. How dumb can you be? If they have put themselves forward as referees and not wrestlers, then this really isn't a story. I would need more information to decide whether or not that's considered dumb. Riffing says, can Vince McMahon elect for presidency? Vince McMahon has no interest in trying to become president of the USA. I think he's very happy with Donald Trump, a very close friend of his, being president, and I just don't think Vince McMahon will ever want to leave the WWE. Panther fan says, I wish the Lucha Brothers would have chose WWE then versus the Usos would have been awesome. There is plenty of time for that match to happen, not necessarily in WWE, but it also may not. Ace Shock says, NXT UK released Ligero. Why would they bring Havoc in? That is dumb. It's worth someone asking a question. So when it comes to things like this, it depends on the future. It depends on what has been definitively proven, because WWE cover their own investigations. Anthony says, Wade Barrett coming in now makes sense given Mara news. Yes, it does. There was no intention for Wade Barrett to be long-term when he was brought in for that 1 week. However, just after that, they made the agreement with Mauro that his time with the company had come to an end, and so negotiations started. Anthony JCP says, what's next for Jericho? Not Orange Cassidy. That feud is definitively done. Chris Jericho has been teasing a new feud. We will see who it will be. It may involve more of the inner circle, but he will definitely be trying to put someone else over, because that's very much what Jericho does. Riffing says AEW and NWA should do a cross-promotional super show. I'm not sure there's much in it for the there's not much in it for AEW. NWA would benefit massively, but AEW as the larger promotion really gets no benefit from that, because most of the viewership is what they already have. That's why when people say to me about, for example, WWE should do a super show with New Japan, there's nothing in it for the WWE. There really isn't. Anthony says Ortiz and Santana are heavily underutilized. I agree with that. I would like to see them more involved in the tag scene. Maybe Young Bucks versus Ortiz and Santana. Maybe Ortiz and Santana get a shot against FTR. Who can tell? Ace Chuck says, what is next for MJF? He's going to rail against the fact that he did not get a clean finish from Moxley. I believe he will get a rematch on TV in the coming weeks. However, that will be the end of the feud. Ace also says Jericho versus Hangman. Would like to see it. Don't think we're going to see it just yet. Riffing says, was Jack Gallagher part of NXT UK or 205 Live when he was released? Because I've seen reports that said that Jack is an NXT UK wrestler. Jack Gallagher was part of 205 Live when he was released. Jack Gallagher has never been an NXT UK wrestler. However, when it comes to NXT 205 and NXT UK, with everything overseen by Triple H, there is a lot of movement around those three divisions, because Triple H treats them as one brand. Panther fan says, Tom, what is your biggest dream match at the moment? This will probably surprise you, but my biggest dream match at the moment is Drew McIntyre versus Rhea Ripley. Anthony says, the endgame has to be Sami versus Jericho. I completely agree with that. I think Sammy Guevara has become Jericho's, in some ways, his pet project, but in many ways, that's the guy he wants to pass the baton to. I believe Jericho will be wrestling for many more years yet, but when the day finally comes, Sami is definitely his guy, as it were. Riff also says, why is Jeff Cobb no longer in the inner circle? Jeff Cobb is not signed to AEW. That's why he's not in the inner circle. There is lots of discussion as to what's next for Jeff Cobb. Personally, I would speculate that he will be joining New Japan once New Japan are able to have him travel over to Japan. Anthony says MJF versus Wardlow is the next direction. Not sure we're going to get that immediately. I think we'll get the rematch first, but I think we will definitely see that happening. Ace says, wow, on Drew versus Rhea. I just think it'll be a great match. Anthony says, give me Suzuki versus Moxley in AEW. Not sure they'd do that match because it's already happened. If you want to see Suzuki versus Moxley, that match has already happened and it's well worth watching because my God. And it was very good. And I would love to see it again, and I probably will do soon. Panther says Rhea taking a Claymore. I think she'd happily take a Claymore. If you're going to have that match between two people, regardless of their gender, they're going to bump for each other. Ace Jog says, did you Fred on New Japan Pro Wrestling? I don't know who Fred is, so I can't possibly speculate. Riffing says Jake Hager versus Wardlow versus Brian Cage versus Lance Archer versus Luchasaurus versus Brody Lee is a big money match. Certainly a big match. Wouldn't necessarily say big money. Anthony believes that Jeff Cobb is signed with Ring of Honor, certainly a possibility, and we will have to see. Ace Shock says Suzuki in AEW would be epic. I'm not sure Minoru Suzuki has any interest in wrestling anywhere other than New Japan, and I'm not entirely sure he would travel for super shows either. Riffing says, will Usos turn heel and join Roman and Heyman? Nope. The Usos, or at least Jey Uso, are going to get destroyed by Roman Reigns. I'm going to take a quick pause in the questions here to say thank you to the 14 people who are currently watching. Thank you to everyone who has joined and asked questions so far. Please do remember to click like as we get through this video. I initially thought we wouldn't have that much to talk about, but here we are. Plenty of questions coming on. Thank you to everyone asking questions. Going to take a quick drink and then get back to it. So, Ace says Darren Young was on New Japan Pro Wrestling. He was on New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong, which is the American version of New Japan, because New Japan does have an American contingent. That is also where we see Jay White, for example. It's also where potentially, if Jeff Cobb has signed with New Japan, we could see him. We could not, however, see Jon Moxley wrestle there. We simply can't. And he is the United States champion. He can't drop the title to anyone because he can't wrestle on American soil for New Japan. He can't wrestle on American soil for any company that is not AEW, and this is why I think super shows are not likely to happen anytime soon. Newman Co says, I believe Suzuki and Asuka is more crazy than Suzuki versus Moxley. Give me a triple threat. Why not? Riffing says, is Braun Strowman becoming a jobber? Nope. There is no intention to make Braun Strowman a jobber. The intention is to drop Braun Strowman back to the upper mid-card to work with developing the talent there. That is what everyone should do after winning their first championship. That is what CM Punk did. That is what The Rock did. That is, in fact, what The Undertaker did as well. Anthony says, is the Uso story leading to Rock versus Roman? To my knowledge, no. The Rock at the moment has not signed anything stating that there will be a match between himself and Roman. There is a lot to consider: movie obligations, insurance. There is a lot to look at. I don't know if that's the match they're going to do, but if they are going to do it, it'll be WrestleMania, so it'll be a while yet. Riffing says, what happened with the Ascension? They got released, mate. Ace Shock says, what is the long-term direction for Finn Balor? I believe Finn Balor will be, come Tuesday, the NXT champion. The long-term direction isn't actually that set in stone, and that's how everybody seems to like it. With Finn Balor, he's there to feud with and put over people. He is considered to be the biggest name on NXT by NXT right now. He is considered to be the top star, and that's why instead of going for championships, as he hasn't done for a while, and he wouldn't have done if not for this situation, what he has been doing essentially is working with younger talent, working with new guys, making them look good, even sometimes in defeat. The plan was for him to continue doing that, but now it looks like he may be the NXT champion. Riffing says, funny fact, Jon Moxley is the current and longest reigning AEW World and IWGP US champion. That is a good fact. I like that. I hope to see him drop the US title at some point soon. New Japan needs it back in play. If they're going to have a New Japan Strong, it'd be great if they could have a tournament for that championship. It really would. So I think they will try and organize something in any other country. Maybe CMLL will sort them out and they can have a match in Mexico between Jay White and Jon Moxley for that championship. Swaggy says, hello, Tom. How are you? I'm very good, thank you. Welcome, Swaggy. What was your immediate reaction to Hardy's fall yesterday? I believe my immediate reaction was, oh! Because it looked really, really painful. Anthony says, Ciampa versus Priest would kill it. That seems to be where they're going for the North American Championship. But they're also building a North American Championship division. It's why we've seen Bronson Reed used a lot more. It's why we've seen Cameron Grimes get a push. I think possibly Velveteen Dream versus Priest is definitely in the offing. But it also leads into what Ace is saying, who will chase Balor for the title. Velveteen Dream, I think, will definitely be in the running, but there may also be something from Gargano. Riffing says, why WWE never had a storyline between The Rock and Dave the Animal Batista? Because The Rock and Batista were very, very briefly there together. And by very, very briefly, I mean they basically weren't. They basically never shared time in the company, so how would they? Panther Fan says, would love to see Keith versus Seth in a feud with a match at Clash. There will not be any non-championship matches at Clash of Champions to my knowledge, so Keith Lee and Seth Rollins are not likely to be on the card. because where I believe we'll see Keith Lee go next, that being into the US Championship division against Bobby Lashley, that is where at the moment it looks like Apollo Crews will be getting a rematch. Anthony says, oh, I missed it. I have a feeling Gargantuan he's done in NXT. He has clarified he means Gargano. It's possible, but it isn't necessarily a set thing. Ace Shock says, will Gargano be a member of Retribution? He'd make a good one, but to my knowledge, he has not donned the mask so far. Panther Fan says, Archer taking the world title from Mox after I believe Mox took the US title from him would be awesome. That is exactly what happened. Archer did get defeated by Jon Moxley after being put through a table, and this is a New Japan table, so it was actually a strong one, to lose the IWGP, the NJPW United States Championship, and that is the last time that Jon Moxley has really worked in New Japan outside of the match with Suzuki. Riffing says, is Tommaso Ciampa the Jon Moxley of NXT? No, Finn Balor is the Jon Moxley of NXT. Green Critic says, if Sasha is kept off TV for a bit, who would you want to see Bayley feud with in the interim? I would like to see a match with Naomi for Clash of Champions, or I would like to see a match with Mandy Rose, who to my knowledge, after winning at SummerSlam, was supposed to be shot straight into that feud, with the idea being that Bayley would lose the championship to Mandy Rose, Sasha Banks would win the championship from Mandy Rose, and we'd get to Sasha versus Bayley that way. However, things have changed, largely because of the unavailability of Sonya Deville, but also it's time for Sasha Banks versus Bayley. I don't think Sasha Banks is going to beat Bayley, however, so I still think Mandy Rose will be the next SmackDown Women's Champion. Ace Shock says, is the heel turn from Omega mean he will feud with Mox for the title and win? Very much a possibility. I do think Lance Archer has a very good shot of taking the championship. However, Kenny Omega, if he does fully turn heel, it would definitely be a very big deal, and it would skyrocket him straight to the main event. Anthony has said, I've seen theories the vignette in purple will be a man next week in Velveteen Dream. That isn't the skin tone I saw. Swagaf says, any new updates on the WWE draft? Only what I've mentioned before. The name I've heard most is Naomi moving to NXT, and a strong possibility that we will see the WWE and Universal Championships swap brand. Riffing says, why is Austin Theory being moved to NXT and AOP got released? Is the Greater Good over? Greater Good is not over. I do believe we are going to lean straight back to Seth and Buddy Murphy taking on the Street Profits for the Tag Team Championships now that the Mysterios, who were going to get that shot, are unavailable. And when it comes to Austin Theory, he's been taken out of the public eye because of issues ongoing. When it comes to AOP, to my knowledge, they had come very close to being cleared. You'll have heard me on these streams saying for a while that I expect AOP to be returning soon and feuding with Street Profits. However, there was apparently a setback, I believe an injury setback, just before they were formally cleared, and the WWE cut their losses. Riffing says, Johnny Gargano versus Seth Rollins. I think that would also be a great feud. And he also says, I hope that Balor, Ciampa, and Gargano never leave NXT. That does create a logjam at the top of NXT and means that people can't really develop. They do regularly need to clear room in NXT, and either we lose people like Balor, Gargano, and Ciampa, or we lose other people, for example, Damian Priest, Velveteen Dream, and so on. Anthony JCP says, is it me or does Sean Spears feel out of place in AEW? I wouldn't say he feels out of place, but I do believe he has had about as much of a push as he has done previously in WWE. Hopefully that push will come soon, but he does have a much more defined character. Bamford Fan says, wonder when Tony Storm is going to get called up. Well, she has not been advertised in the vignettes for NXT UK. Neither has Tyler Bate, and neither of them have been present for interviews. When it comes to NXT UK, a lot of people in the UK have been invited down to the BT Sport offices, where they are hosting NXT UK to interview some of the talent and create a buzz about their return. Tony Storm, Tyler Bate have not been there, as well as many others, but Tyler Bate and Tony Storm have not been advertised for NXT UK whatsoever, and they have not been made available to interview either. That's a bit of news for you. Anthony JCP says, I'd like Nikki Cross to get a women's title soon. Same. I think she will be moving to Raw in the draft. Jagger says, I miss Lacey Evans on TV. Very talented woman, hasn't been given much in the way of storylines. Riffing says, is Otis losing the Money in the Bank briefcase soon? He is not. Ace Shock says, what does it mean for Naomi if she is not going for the title? If she is not going for the title, she is not going for anything. And this is one of the reasons that I'm hearing rumors that she'll be moving back to NXT. Riffing says, is Wade Barrett returning to the ring soon? No, he is not. Anthony says, I meant the purple smoke, and this time instead of a woman, it'll be the man shown walking. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. To my knowledge, it's a woman. Riffing says, is Dominic getting a name change to Prince Mysterio, or are these plans scrapped? It won't be Prince. It'll be the Spanish word for Prince. And the name is copyrighted. The mask has already been designed. The outfit has been designed. Vince McMahon is happy with Dominic Mysterio wrestling as Dominic Mysterio. However, he doesn't want to do a name change right now because he believes that will impact on the branding. Anthony says, what's next for Ridge Holland? Wrestling. I would just hope he gets some wrestling matches. Swaggy says, wow, the WWE title and Universal title swapping brands. I hope it happens. Roman, and even though Roman's a new champion, there aren't that many people at the top level on SmackDown, and Drew McIntyre has already beat everyone. So I think a move there would refresh everything. Ace Shock says Gargano does need to move to Raw SmackDown. I believe he does, just to at least get him in some new storylines. He's already wrestled everyone. Panther Fan says, so would you get the Buddy Murphy turn during the tag title match? Would be an interesting way to do it. I would do it after a tag title match. I would have him lose on he and Rollins' behalf, and then I would have Rollins essentially send him away. And then that would, for me, would move into a match at Hell in a Cell. That could then be non-title. Ace Shock says, why is Tony Storm absent? I don't know. Riffing says, why WWE doesn't need their roster page on their website? The roster site is updating very rarely because people keep reporting about changes to brands because they read the roster page. It gives too much away. Riffing says, is Leo Rush retired? He is not. He's actively wrestling. Riffing says, is Cassius Ohno and Curtis Axel joining AEW? I have no idea, but I appreciate that you keep asking that. We have no questions in at the moment. We have 15 people watching. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes in case we get a few more questions come in. Please do remember to click like on the video. We've had a lot more attention as time has gone on, and the numbers did go up a little bit. We had a very successful stream on Friday. I will continue to do Friday and Sunday streams and talk news there. I really do enjoy these, and I'm glad I see so many familiar faces. That's really good for me, really good for my growth, because when it comes to these streams, this is me trying to essentially monetize YouTube, trying to make it so that I can be a full-time wrestling journalist. I've given myself 6 months, and if it doesn't work out, these streams will be stopping because I have to find a full-time job, and that means I simply won't be able to do these things. It is what it is, but also, to be fair, the Smack Talk shows, which go on Sportskeeda's Facebook and YouTube immediately after SmackDown, 2 weeks in a row, we've had 20,000 views. So whatever I'm doing, I'm apparently doing it right. Last few questions. Anthony JCP says, I'd like Seth and Murphy splitting like Miz and Riley. I'm not entirely sure what you're saying there, but if that's something you'd like to see, certainly. Is Will Hobbs signed to AEW? No idea. Anthony says, predictions on who Sabian's best man is. Not sure. I would like there to be a wrestling match for the honor. I guess says, wouldn't Tony be mad about speaking out movement? Why would she be mad about that? That's pure speculation on your part there. I have no comment that I can make about that. Riffing says, is Royal Rumble part of the Big Four pay-per-views? Yes, it is. It always has been. Swaggy says, do you believe Seth Rollins will move to SmackDown the next WWE draft? I do not. I believe Seth Rollins will be on Raw until he retires. Those are all the questions I have. Thank you to everyone who has joined me here for the 45 or so minutes we've been doing this stream. Thank you to everyone who asked a question. Thank you to everyone who clicked like, and thank you to everyone who will join me in future. I really do appreciate everyone dropping in. I'm going to end the stream now. Thank you for watching. I've been Tom Colhue, and thank you for joining me. I'll see you Friday, I'll see you Monday, and I'll see you next week.